Hi everyone. Hello again. This is David from last week's meeting. It was definitely very nice to see all of you for the grafting presentation and demonstration. I had to re-record myself because I couldn't record it on the day of, unfortunately. I really appreciated seeing you all because it gave me a chance to discuss something with you that isn't discussed nor practiced nearly enough. I have often found myself standing in my garden, and I know you have well. I know you have as well, um, where you'd look at your collection and single out a tree and think to yourself, "Man, I wish this tree had better foliage," or "I wish this tree had um, a better root base," or "I wish this tree was just overall more interesting." Well, the answers are all in front of you. Being able to ask those questions means you're curious enough to graft because well, one, you know what looks good, and two, you know what the flaws are. So I think it's a secret that everyone knows about, and it's literally in plain view. So let's jump right into it, right? So first we got to ask the question, why do we graft in bonsai? Well, grafting, I think, is a refinement trait. The definition to refinement is to improve upon something by making small changes. It's often the key to success when trying to produce quality material. Um, and again, it's not a secret to anyone, but it just seems not enough attempted or uh, to enhance their projects. It's one of the reasons why I think the Japanese material is so sought after because they take the time to do the small things. And those small things, 40 years into the future, will become the great features that make them really sought after. It's the reason we go crazy over the material. We spend a lot of money just for a nice root base or a lot of money for a very well tapered tree. So yeah, I want to put in this disclaimer and that I want to include air layering into this grafting topic because I believe the two, when applied, are in symphony with each other. They generally help raise success rates. So let's re-ask the question of why do we graft in bonsai? So we do so because we want to, one, correct flaws, two, force nature's hand, three, propagating interesting features, four, changing out foliage, and five, improve vigor and vitality. I will go through each one of these and provide examples. So for the very first one, correcting flaws. So I brought a trident during the meeting, and that trident was an air layer. Tridents don't really play to the rules when air layering. They are such strong trees that they like to bridge air layering attempts. Bridging is what happens when the bark grows over the wound site in trying to repair the exposed tissue. You'll be lucky if you get two roots, but sometimes I feel like you only get one. So here's my air layer when I separate it from the tree. As you can see, the bridging is completely healed over. And there's a part on the side where the tree decided to throw out a blowhole of roots on the bottom. It does me no good as I wanted the roots to be radially forming from here. So how does one correct this flaw? Well, I added trident whips by gouging out a channel into the trunk body. I then tacked the whips into the tree to ensure that the whips and the tree had a firm contact. So then I buried it, and in a growing season or two, oops, the tree fused with the whips. The tops of the whips then are removed in the fall, and I'll continue to add more whips to gradually fill out the entire circumference of the base. And next year, I'll be able to repot and remove the blowhole roots. So I mentioned how grafting and air laying can be paired up. I had another air layer on the same tree, and I air layered this one branch, and it failed, unfortunately. The failed air layer bridged and formed this massive callus that allowed me to reattempt air layering the following year. But this time I had an added bulge, which will help me with a root flare, I thought. Unfortunately, the second attempt was also a failure. So this year, I'm going to really put my foot down and be very aggressive and add some whips onto the branch and remove it the following year. This will help save time as well as increase success rates in creating a nice root flare. All right. Next, we're going to discuss forcing nature's hand. So during the presentation, I asked the question to many, how many of you have looked at a tree and said, I wished a branch could grow here? Well, that's a pretty common one. However, you're likely not going to get something there by wishing for it to happen. The best approach would be to thread graft. However, I wanted to share with you a more complex technique because it really showcases what you can really do with grafting. This is taken from Sergio Kwan and his grafting approach on his Japanese maple. So what he did was first he had to identify a branch where he would like to move that branch to. Then he took a whip and he grafted it onto the branch by approach graft. A growing season later, that fused. Then he was able to remove the branch, and then that branch is now completely sustained by that whip. He would then take a knife and whittle the end of that branch into a joinery peg, and then was able to peg it right into the part where the tree he would like a branch to emerge from. So word on the street is that this process took. So I just want to reiterate that this is not a beginner's technique because it can take up to 5 years, and there are many risks you can really, do to, there's there is really only a small handful of trees that you can really do this type of peg grafting. So the one key trait are trees that can move a lot of water very quickly. Um, and those types of trees are usually your maples and your azaleas. So this is a pretty huge badge of honor for Sergio and to anyone else who wants to attempt it. All right, then we want to graft in bonsai to propagate interesting features. So I mentioned earlier that the trident maple I brought in is an air layer. I wanted to showcase this as it came from a tree I wanted to restart, and there are some branches on there that are quite interesting and have desirable features. So this came from the top of this tree stock, and I removed it from the host tree, and this was the outcome. As you can see, it has a very interesting base with some interesting trunk movements. This air layer is far from completion, but I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future. All right, changing out foliage. This is one of the more popular reasons why we graft in bonsai. There are some tree species that have far more superior foliage. So for example, for conifers, shinpaku and itoigawa foliage is the foliage of choice. We choose this foliage because of their desirable features, like the ability to mound up and be dense to form foliage pads. On the other hand, there are also some tree species that have extremely desirable trunk lines and growth habits. However, they have extremely poor foliage. So by mixing the two, we're able to create the perfect union, the ultimate specimen. So in this example, I took from Michael Hagedorn, a ponderosa pine cascading with a large mass of ponderosa needle foliage at the tip. For a small tree of this size, this foliage mass is way too much, way too much. The ponderosa trunk is often regarded as very primal and visceral because it lives in such a hostile environment. So Michael Hagedorn was able to scion graft Japanese black pine scions onto the branch that are at least pencil thick, and through the years he was able to achieve this. Note all of the ponderosa needles are gone. The tree is reoriented. It's likely going to be a literati tree. And the tree is thriving with its new foliage. So it's much smaller and it's still able to reduce because that's the nature of Japanese black pine needles. So this new Japanese black pine foliage will serve this ponderosa trunk line very, very well. I'm excited to see where this goes as well. All right, lastly, We also graft because we want to improve vigor and vitality. So many of you probably are familiar with this tree. It's from the National Bonsai and Penjing Museum, and it's a Japanese white pine. However, if you look at the base, you'll notice that the base is different from the top of the tree. That's because the bottom is that of a Japanese black pine. The Japanese white pine is known to have a weaker root system, so early on its development, a Japanese white pine is grafted onto this Japanese black pine because the Japanese black pine has a much stronger and vigorous root base. You can kind of see how the platelets on the bottom are much more coarse, and the platelets on the top is much finer. So the base of the Japanese black pine supports the Japanese white pine top to improve upon the vigor and vitality. So all while having a very delicate top half, which has finer and softer foliage, unlike the Japanese black pine. So you can do this if your two specimens are from the same genus. But be aware that you want to always graft the stronger base, weaker top onto a much stronger base. All right. So lastly, before we head into the demonstration, I wanted to share with you tree physiology because there is a part of this I really want to drive home because it's really important to grafting. So I'll start with the heartwood. So the heartwood is the inner part of the tree and it's non-living. Although it's not alive, it does not decay either. The structure is comprised of a composite of these long needle-like cellulose fibers that's glued together with this chemical glue called lignin. If this rings a bell, it's because it's the term used to describe the young fleshy growth that becomes hard and woody, and that's known as lignification. This composite is oftentimes comparable to the strength of steel. So, and then that would make sense as trees are tall, and that strength is needed to ensure stability. The next part is the xylem, or the sapwood. This is the wider band around the heartwood, and it's the tree's main water line, as it pumps water from the base of the tree all the way up to the apex. This part of the tree, as it ages, it will lose its vitality and will eventually become part of the heartwood. And this makes sense because as the tree grows taller and ages, the heartwood needs to get larger and stronger. So I'm going to skip the cambium for now. So I'll go over to the next part, which is the phloem. The phloem is also a transport system tissue, but instead of water, it transports food and a hormone called auxin up and down the tree. The xylem will eventually become part of the bark to replenish the bark as the tree ages. So the cambium is sandwiched between the xylem and the phloem. This is the part of the trunk that actually grows. It is part of it is the part that produces new phloem and new xylem. As the xylem becomes more of the heartwood and the phloem becomes more of the bark, the cambium produces both xylem and phloem to replenish both layers. The auxin that's carried by the phloem is what causes the stimulation of growth in the cells that produce both xylem and phloem. It's important in grafting because when we graft, we have to align the cambium from the grafting material to the host. When the alignment is perfect, the cambium will produce the necessary phloem and xylem, forming a successful union, which will result in a successful graft. Because the cambium will produce more xylem on the inside of the tree and phloem on the outside of the cambium layer to increase success. Lastly is the bark. This is the last layer of defense against the outer environment to the tree. It also ensures that the moisture of the interior of the tree is kept inside. So today I will be demonstrating 3 types of grafts. I know there's 4, but the root graft is essentially an approach graft. So for the scion grafts, I will be demonstrating on conifers. And for a thread graft, I will be doing this on deciduous material. And for approach graft, I'll also be doing on deciduous material. I am so glad that there were so many of you at the presentation. I was so happy to see you there because, again, I really want to talk about this because I feel like we just don't do it enough. So yeah, let's move on to the demonstration part of this presentation. Thanks.
You see this? Kind of? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start first with a thread graft. And what I brought here, this is actually, I just wanted to make sure I can pass this around easier. So what I have is, this is a wisteria cutting. And this wisteria, I'm going to thread graft onto itself. A lot of times you can do that, or you can have whips that you can attach to it, or start thread through it. But wisterias make really long tendrils, so wherever I need a branch, I can just force it back in and grow a new branch here. Okay, so one of the first things I need to do is I need to wire this up, wire the branch that I like to graft, and it's this one, because it needs support. I don't want it breaking on me. So I'll pass this along to you guys so you can see. I just need it to help it bend. I don't need to wire this all the way through. All right. Okay. So one of the things we have to consider when we thread graft is positioning. So I want to put this thread through here, mainly because this part right here has a bump out, and placement of the branch is important. I don't want to thread this graft inverse and come out through a curve. It doesn't make sense. So placement is important. So I want to put a branch where it bumps outwards, okay? Because it doesn't have a branch here. So we have to put, I'd like to put a branch through here. So when you have where you place a branch matters in the angle in which you want the branch to come out from. Higher up, you will want the branch to come out outward. When you are lower, usually it comes down. Okay, so how you drill the holes is also important, because when you drill the hole, you need to, how do I say this? It's backwards. The drill insert is the exit, because when you drill out, the exit will blow out the cambium. It'll rupture. So what you want to do is you want to inverse it. So your drill insert is the exit, and your exit is the thread's insert. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want it to come out this way, right? So I would want to insert the drill here, like so. Okay? So I'm going to put this here so you can see. Hold on. I'm not getting a lot of, okay. Okay, can you see that? Yes, you can still see that, yes. There we go. All right. You see that hole? Goes all the way through. And you see that blowout right there? All this blows out, so you want to make this the insertion point, and this is, and where the drill bit went through is going to be the exit. Now, I also wanted to make sure that when you select the drill bit, you need to make sure that the drill bit is one, exactly roughly the same size as the width of the branch plus the bud, because you don't want to knock that out. So you want to make sure that you capture width of the whip of the branch plus the bud, because I've done it before where I've made a hole too small, and I just pulled it through, and all the buds came off, and then it was a dead branch. So yeah. The other thing that needs to happen is you need to add what we use in grafting called buddy tape. It's what Bjorn uses most. So the buddy tape is used to protect the buds so that when you feed it through, the buds are protected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-stretch this, as you can see. And I'm just going to protect the buds that's on here. Buddy tape likes to stick to itself, which is why it's great for grafting. And you can get it on Amazon. I think you can get it on Amazon. It's like 25 bucks. And it's good to have like multiple boxes of this stuff, because if you graft a lot after this presentation, it's going to be very, very helpful. It does not, you cannot use it on plumbing, which I found out yesterday. So don't apply it to pipes. It is not plumber's tape. Yes. I found out we have to replace every single pipe in our house because of a leak. So that's fun. Okay. All right, that being done, this stuff is going to come off. I just wanted to make sure it's just protected. So, so here we go. We are going to whip this around, bend this first, so that we can get some tension going. And then I'm going to take this tip, I'm just going to pull it through. Okay. Didn't need to use all that much, I guess. There is one thing that I forgot to bring, and it's sandpaper. Sandpaper is actually important because what you want to do is you want to remove the cambium, sorry, the layers to expose the cambium on the whip so that it can be attached to, so you can have contact with the interior tissues of the threaded area. The other thing that I want to point out is you would want on here as the new bud to be as close as possible to the main trunk, because we don't want this to be out here. We don't want an internode this far out, because why should we? If we have a chance to really make it work in our favor, let's pull it back, let's put it right here, it's closest, so that when this grows out and gets thicker and thicker and thicker, we're guaranteed a bud here for later. So as I don't have sandpaper, let's just pretend that I sanded. So then to make this have maximum contact, I have here coffee stirrers. I have a ton of these for kintsugi, and for grafting, it's great. It's these coffee stirrers. You can create a wedge like this, and you can just jam it through. You can either, because you're going to expose the tissue all around the whip, you can either choose to push it up or push it down. It's all on your perspective. But I'm just going to plug this in here to make sure it is maximum contact. And there you go, as you can see. And then I'm going to take some putty. And I'm just going to seal it around the entry and the exit. This ensures moisture doesn't get lost and that it's kept within . And there we have it, one thread graft. All right, so I'm gonna pass it around so you can see it. I think thread graft is one of the easiest ones because Sergio has mentioned that thread grafts has it can fail because you can strip all the buds off. But thread grafts, there's nothing for it to go. It has to elongate, it has to thicken, so it has to more or less take the graft. So I have had all of my thread grafts have been successful. I've never had one fail. So it's one of the easiest ones. Okay. All right, then we're going to talk about scion grafting. Scion grafting is a bit more involved. What am I doing? I'll put them this way. All right, so I will say for scion grafts, everything needs to be as clean as possible. Super, super clean, as much as you can. So I want to show you some of the tools that I have. I have this knife, this Japanese utility knife. If you look carefully, it cuts on one side. It's flat on one side and beveled on the other. The flat side helps with the scion cutting because what you can do is it sits flat on the scion, and you just glide through, and you just cut it out. The other materials you need is a sharpening tool, because I sharpen after every scion cut, or rather preparation every scion. And then I have isopropyl alcohol, which I disinfect everything, which I already done before, but I will do it again. Clean scissors, because you want to cut off material versus ripping out material. You don't want to rip material out because you're going to disturb the cambium layer, and you don't want to do that. You just want to cut what you don't need off. And what else? And then the tape again, and then this wood block. This wood block is important because it allows you to have an elevated surface, and it's cleaner, that you can clean, and it's just what everyone does. So I do. Okay, so I'm just going to show you again. Disinfect, sorry, I'll do it here. Disinfect. 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 Why not? Okay, so I have here from a neighbor's garden, which he so graciously let me cut. But let's just pretend that this juniper it does not have the desired foliage. It has very sparse foliage, and it won't mound up. So what we have here, we're going to graft, is shinpaku, which we do know balls up and is very condensed, and it's the ideal material we want to use. So what we want to do is we want to select from here your resource tree. Does that help? Okay. I mean, does it help? Yes or no? The light. Okay. All right. Sorry. It's okay. So what I want to do here is I want to select from this about roughly 4 to 6 inch long, a scion tip, a leader. So I'm going to select 1 or 2. But what I want is this growth here. This growth is the leader is what I want. I don't want something that is that doesn't have one. So this is a good one. I don't want it to be super thick as well. I think for me, I'm comfortable with something just slightly thicker than a toothpick would be a good example of picking one. And then I'm gonna cut this out. I'm gonna cut more than I need. I'm not gonna use all of it. I just need to cut just enough. So here you go. As you can see. So I'm gonna clean this out. All I'm really using is this much of it. That's all I'm using. So I'm gonna cut off everything else. Again, I'm cutting, and I'm not peeling anything away because that's what I don't want. Clean scissors will help. The reason why I disinfect everything is because I have had many experiences where the scions won't take because it can get fungus, and it will not help with your chances of it taking. So that's why I want to make sure that everything is disinfected after every scion prep. So as you can see, I took out all the stuff on the bottom. I don't need a lot of a foliage mass because I don't want too much of it, because what happens is if there's a lot on here, let's say if this had this much more foliage on it, what happens is it will transpire, and the transpiration, it will transpire too much, and that will lead to failure as well. So you want to keep it to as much as I'm comfortable, which is this. All right? So I'm going to be making 2 cuts here, one long cut and one short cut. The long cut and the short cut is important because when you cut into this, the way you cut it, you will have a longer, the flat will be longer and shorter on either side. So, so I'm going to show you here, because I can zoom in with this thing. Can you see that? Is that helpful? All right. Okay. So I've sharpened this already. So what I want to show you is I want to make one long cut. So I rest the knife on top, and all I'm doing is I'm just pushing it away. And the best word I can say to what I'm really doing is I'm just gliding on top of this. And you can wiggle the knife back and forth because it can get stuck. But what I'm doing is I'm just pushing it away. All right, that was good. That was the short one, not the long one. Okay. I'm gonna make the long one now. There we go. All right. So this exposes the cambium. If you can, I don't know if you can see it here, but you see there is the green tissue. It's really hard to see. You'll see it in the video. But there's a green tissue, and then there's the internal tissue. All that we talked about in the tree physiology is all there. Okay? So at this tip right here, it's kind of not very, clean. So what we want to do is we want to cut it flat, like so. So that's how it should look, and that is a sign, and this is it in preparation to wrap this scion up. We'll clean this out so we get more room. Okay, remember, I'm cutting out, I'm not plucking anything out. All right, then I'm gonna take my buddy tape. And I'm gonna pre-stretch it again. This is, buddy tape is like waxy. It's like paraffin. So that's how it can stick to itself. All right, so what I'm gonna do is start at the bottom. I'm not really holding, I'm not gonna bind this up too hard, but I just want to put enough pressure on here to keep the foliage together and keep this together, yeah. This acts as a really good greenhouse for the scion, because as the growing season goes on, it can get humid because it can transpire, and it will be this is the perfect environment to promote growth. And that's it. Oops. And that's one prepared scion. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I cut into this. Again, placement is important. So let's say because this tree, this branch has an outward bend, I'm gonna put it right here. All right? Okay, so I'm going to start this cut. And I'm going to make a fairly deep cut because I want to access all the layers. And again, I'm just pushing and gliding in, but it's at a steeper angle. Man, this is hard. It is not gliding. Help sharpening again. Disinfect. Whoops. All right, let's go higher. This is practice. This is practice. You want to find a place to graft where it's about thicker than a pencil. You don't want it thinner, because when you do this, what will happen is you will cut too much of it, and it will not be, the success rate will not be as good because you've cut too much of the tissue. All right, this is going. This is working. Okay. All right. So we've exposed enough of this. You can see this flap right there will be the receiving end of this. All right. I'm gonna zoom out. Now, for junipers, you can really place this however which way. You don't need to follow the branch. You can do this if you wanted, backwards, or sideways, or whatever. You don't really need to follow the grain of the branch. However, pines do. So what you could do is, what I generally like to do is I like to put this on a diagonal, mainly because there's better points of contact, because if you can imagine, if you put it on a diagonal like this, it hits all the cambium layers. If you do want to put it in vertically, you don't want to put it dead center in the middle. What you want to do is you want to put it off to the side, here, or here, where it gets access to all the layers. So I'll put it as an angle, like so. Close it up, get some buddy tape. Pre-stretch it. One great thing about this not being a connected branch is I can rotate the branch and not the tape, because rotating the tape is really hard. There's no need to apply the putty to this. You want this to be tight because you want this to have the maximum amount of contact.
Why do you pre-stretch the tape?
Because it's waxy. Because if you don't pre-stretch it, it's very it's very loose. When you pre-stretch it, you can really put a lot of pressure on it. there you have it. This is it. There you go. And I'll pass this around too. Thank you. Okay. Okay, now we'll do pines. No, you don't want to put this in full sun. Thank you for asking that, actually. You want this to have partial shade. You don't want to cook the scion because it will. So the best way to put it, if you have shade cloth, it's about 30% shade. If you don't have shade cloth, you just put it under a tree, and that's the best place for it. You don't, in my experience, you don't want to also put it in complete shade because what will happen is it will encourage fungal growth, and that's not good either. So that's why it's important to make sure you have the right balance of the location, because that's also yet another thing that can fail. So yeah, I'm hoping I'm making this enticing. So, okay. Yeah. Timing, like when to do it?
How long would it take? What are the signs for taking them off again? I mean, I guess we all know the signs of.
Yeah, the for me, the scions start. You'll notice that it will take, because it's by the second or third month, it hasn't like turned brown. That is a good indicator. So by the time it's around like August or so, when it's super hot, once it passes that and it's not dead, that's like the best sign. But before that happens, you're gonna want to cut the housing a little bit to let some of that steam or moisture come out, because you don't want it to cook. So yeah. I'll have to come back and follow up, because I have some examples where I can share that that have taken. So okay. So I wanted to share with you this one. This is the pine. This is a Scots pine. This Scots pine backbud really easily. Because I wanted to show you this. You can see all this foliage that is growing back, lower and closer to the trunk. But I just want to show you anyways, because I think this will be a really good example. So I'm just going to, for a pine. So I'm just going to cut all of this stuff off because I really don't need it. The intent was to let this grow, so it gets longer and longer and longer and longer, so it gets thicker and thicker. But the rest of the stuff I don't really need. What I probably want is I want to turn this into a shohin tree, so I want to start maybe a branch lower down here. So I'm going to cut this off, we don't need it. One of the best things about cutting all this stuff off is now you have scion material from the same tree. Put this to the side. You can see here, I'm going to select one of these. These two seem to be more vigorous, so I'm going to take one of the two. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to take it all the way down to the base. And again, I am not going to be ripping any of these needles off, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these all off. For pines, I will say that you probably want to leave about 5 to 7 pairs, because again, when I had talked about the juniper scion graft, I didn't want to leave too much foliage So what I wanted to do was just, you know, leave that much. But for this Scots pine, I think I'm just going to leave this much just to show for demonstration. You can leave five to seven pairs on a black pine. So this is how much I'm comfortable with applying to as a graft. So I left more than what I really need. So I'm going to do the same thing again. All right, disinfect. I'll make my cut. It's a lot easier. Pines are a lot easier to cut. You have it. Long, short. Okay, and I said I wanted to put it right there. So I'm going to cut deep. Exposed layers. That's fairly good. You can see that cut. All right. So for pines, you can't do what you can for junipers. You can't put it sideways. You can't put it backwards. You have to put it going the direction of the grain. So I'm going to insert this long side in the back. And I'm gonna put it at a diagonal because that's gonna touch all four corners, all four contacts of the cambium. Pre-stretch some buddy tape. So fun fact, I once put on 20 grafts on the tree. That was an entire day's process. It was a lot of prep work, and that was just one tree. So I grafted on like 5 or 6 trees and grafted about like up to like 60 grafts. So it's fun, I promise. If it's not, it's practice, and that's what we all need, practice. Oh, what am I doing? I'm sorry, I forgot to wrap it. Embarrassing, sorry. All right, here we go. Diagonal. If you don't already, you should have a fungal regiment started already, because you don't want to give fungal growth the upper hand. So if you can pre-treat your trees with fungicide, you should absolutely do so. And there you go. Okay. You can come up and see that later if you want. It's a little bit drippy. That's why I don't want to pass it around. Okay. So scions are all done. So I want to get to root grafting. Approach graft. So there is a part of the back to this tree that does not have any roots. Well, it didn't have any roots before, but I wanted to add more roots here. In here, it's a flat side that I would like to put a root graft in there. So I'm going to set this aside, but I want to show you one of these trident whips. So I'm going to take it out of the container, and I'm going to dislodge the soil. From within, there should be a kink where the root kicks out. And where that kicks out is a perfect place to place the back of that up against the tree. It's usually found lower in the roots too, so it's not usually like farther up. And there it is. So I'm just going to cut this off so you can see. Okay. If you can see, there is that bump out because it comes straight out. And then there's a flat back to that. So I'm gonna take this back and push it into the tree and let this come out as the new roots. Can you see that? Okay. So I'm going to expose some of the soil in the back here. That's the area I would like to attempt to put a root graft. So I'm going to gouge this out. It has to be pretty deep. You can see that that's the channel that I gouged out. I'm gonna do a test fit. That's good. And I'm going to start removing the back end, the back side of this to expose the layers. You see? Get some tacks ready. I like to just use 2 or 3 if possible. Get rid of some more of the soil. Lay this root mass flat. Push that in. Apply the tack. And I have this little tiny hammer to help with Okay, 2 is good enough. So check for stability. That's on there. It has full contact. And then I'll take wound sealant. Apply it to the site. And I don't want this to dry out. I will just reuse some of that soil back here. And that is how I would root graft all of these. So this will go back out into full sun. It doesn't need a lot of protection, but now it does because you don't want it to freeze. But after it, the hard freezes are over, this can go back out and then just let it do its thing. And you can take this off in fall. And that is all I got for grafting.